My name is Hope McKee. I've been doing trail work with Trail Keepers of Oregon since 2018, shortly after the Gorge Fire. Trail Keepers of Oregon has a list of how many trail parties you have done, and I believe I'm number 12 in the organization. I think I've done I think I was at 189 or 190 trail parties. The first trail I worked on in the gorge was Upper McCord and Gillowa Falls, and we worked on that. That was 2018, right after the big fire, and we worked in there that first winter for probably a solid 6 or 8 months, just rebuilding rock wall. And a lot of those rock walls were built by the CCC a long time ago, and a lot of them got destroyed in the fire, or trees fell down and took down half the rock wall. So it felt really historic, and kind of, I guess, sort of felt honored to be able to be picking up these same chunks of stone that other people had used to build the rock wall, decades ago, and to be rebuilding that. And it just sort of makes you feel like you're a part of history almost. We work primarily in wilderness, and you're not able to use or allowed to use any kind of power tools in wilderness. With me, I have my lovely 6-foot felling saw named Felicia because she's a feller. I got her from a man I know who was an old Forest Service firefighter back in the 60s, and they were getting rid of all of their crosscut saws because they were switching over to using chainsaws more. And so I got Felicia from him, and I've been using her. She's been on countless trail parties now and has cut many logs. When the Eagle Creek fire burned, it was actually a crazy moment for me because I had just been backpacking with my family, and we didn't really know what was going on. And so we started driving back into Portland and started noticing a heck of a lot of smoke, and the air was yellow and hazy, and we were just trying to process. We had not been reading the news. We were going to come back over the Bridge of the Gods, but we weren't allowed to because it was shut down because of the fire. So we were driving home on Highway 14. I mean, it looked like the entire length of the gorge was just in flame. I hadn't really spent much time in burnt landscapes. The first time I went back into the gorge, I was really expecting it just to be completely destroyed. I mean, I think that was the overall sentiment of a lot of my friends, the people I was talking to in Portland and nearby, was just like, oh my gosh, the gorge is gone, the gorge is destroyed, it's never going to be the same again. And you take it to the extreme and think it's just gone forever. But going back in, even initially, even in 2018, shortly after the fire, I mean, there was a lot of new growth coming up. It was pretty amazing. It was little stuff. It was little things, little vines, and Oregon grape, and maybe some vine maples. But we started seeing rebirth pretty shortly after the fire. It was very heartening to see. Things that I noticed when we went back into the woods were like little bird nests, like right by the trails. People hadn't been onto those trails for a long time. I mean, depending on what year you're talking about, but 1, 2, 3 years, some of these trails have been closed, and you see how the animals have really taken over. And I almost felt a little bad going in there thinking like, oh man, like all these animals are gonna be sad that we're coming back. But it was amazing, and especially seeing some of the trees that were so badly burned and so singed and just looked absolutely black and charred, and then you look up at the canopy and it's like, oh my gosh, there's green. There's just green up there. It's coming back. I mean, some of the trees didn't come back, but a lot of them actually survived the fire, which was, we look at fire as a scary thing that's destroying the stuff that we love, when I'm sure all of nature and the forest and even the animals are that's normal for them. I mean, that's not unusual. The real value of an area is the habitat it provides, and just the natural beauty and the landscape, and just not just through the lens of a human being looking at it and thinking how can we use it.
Rule number 1, you have to be safe. And safety begins, I could go on a long detailed description of this. Safety involves personal safety, meaning you have to pay attention. If you're being asked to do something you don't think is safe, don't do it. Bring it up. It can be discussed. We want everyone to feel welcome in the woods. Rule number 2, have fun. If you're not having fun, it's an emergency. We have to talk about it, figure out how to make that change. And then rule number 3 is not really a rule. It's just sort of a byproduct. We get some work done. And we always get a whole lot of work done. The yellow hat means I'm a crew leader. And how that happens is you volunteer for a while, and after a while you start noticing that there's leadership training courses available. Then you learn a lot about what goes into making the trails that the trips happen, and I would say most of the rest of the training's on the job. I started working with Trail Keepers of Oregon right after the fire, and before that I'd done a certain amount of informal trail work on family property, but mostly for the last 4 years with Trail Keepers of Oregon right after the fire. The Nesmith Trail was one of, anybody that's fairly athletic, the Nesmith Trail was on their radar, and was with a number of people, it was their favorite trail because it goes up so high so fast. In September we got permission to start working on Nesmith, so then we ran a scout trail in there, a scout party in there, and it was very difficult, very steep, and also a whole lot of landslides and brush and fairly substantial trees, and anyway, it was challenging. Nesmith is a long way up in the air, and we've actually worked on quite a few different sections of it, and as we got closer to the top, it was absolutely true that we had to walk a long way before we could do any work at all, and we had to leave the site sooner than we did lower down. So the amount of work you could do would get smaller and smaller the higher we went. I really like scouting. I really like figuring out how to do logs and cutting them, and I really like some of the more specialized tread work. Like I like building things like rock walls or bridge abutments or things that require some level of creativity. Back when I was young and strong, I could leave work at 3 in the afternoon, come out here and go up Nesmith. And so I loved that trail. Going in there after the fire and rehabilitating that trail, one of them, it was really fascinating to just, you could see that skeleton, you could kind of see what the nuts and bolts of the Nesmith Trail were in a way that I hadn't understood before. One of the things that's fascinating about trails is that when you're doing them, you don't even think they're there, that you don't even notice that the trail's there. You're busy looking at the view or talking to your friend or looking forward to being at the top of the point or breathing hard, or you're just busy doing other stuff. You're not even thinking that the trail exists. And going back and actually making the trail exist totally changes the perspective on what's happening here. And it makes me, one of the things that I find most rewarding is to actually be totally anonymous and to be doing a thing that's totally not even noticed. There's just all sorts of decisions that you make all along the way that when you're hiking the trail you don't realize all those decisions were made. You're just following you're actually not paying attention to the trail at all.